us.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julia Colbert. I'm the program manager of the ASU Project Cities program. Thank you, Mayor and Council and Town Manager, for having us here today, as well as the star of the show, Janelle, who's a graduate student at ASU, who's been hard at work on this project for 2 semesters now. So I wanted to give just a very brief introduction to Project Cities for members of the council that may not be as familiar, as well as any members of the public that were here. And then I will step out of the way and let Janelle have most of the presentation, though the bicyclists are very hard to follow. Project Cities is a program at Arizona State University that's part of the Global Futures Laboratory, and it was started in 2017 as an effort to connect all of the research, resources, and innovation of the university with communities around the state in which this university is situated. We're also part of the EPIC network, which is a big international network of 70 other universities following this model all around the world. So Clarkdale is part of a big cohort of communities globally doing this type of work. The program, the way that we facilitate that connections is we work with communities like Clarkdale. You propose various projects that you have opportunities for or challenges with, and then we match them with faculty at ASU teaching courses, and the students get to facilitate the projects through their coursework. So it's really this win-win-win relationship. And we've been working with Clarkdale since 2019, which is pretty crazy. It's been 4 or 5 years at this point. And I've had numerous successful projects from the downtown revitalization plans to I think our recent community handbook, our employee handbook, as well as the arts incubator last semester. So happy to another time share more about it if anyone has questions. So for this semester, we actually had 3 projects that we worked on with the town of Clarkdale. First is Janelle's. I'm going to briefly share about each of the projects. Janelle will be the only one presenting today, but for members of the council, we'll have recorded videos for the other presentations you can watch later, as well as a summary reports that will be delivered after several months. So I'll skim over this one, community survey, figuring out what the residents of the town of Clarkdale are passionate about, focused on, and how that might align with your strategic plan. And then I want to shout out to Kelli Larson, who's the faculty member that has been mentoring Janelle for a year on this project. She's on the call as well. I won't pick on her to talk, but she's here for support.
Hi, Kelly.
She's here. And then second was doing a housing analysis for the Bitter Creek Industrial Park. I know the council's been eager for kind of action to be taken on that. So a class within also the planning department at ASU worked on examining different strategies for how to implement different types of housing in the BCIP, as well as resources for policy and zoning. So I'm very excited to see that presentation. I know the students are submitting it today, actually. And then the last one is one of the EPICS classes, so the first year engineering students classes. They're dipping their toes into engineering and structure. So these students are determining different road layout options for the kind of bridge to the road to get into the industrial park. So if that bridge is ever built, it'll be able to have kind of find ways to get 18-wheelers in or stuff like that.
When that bridge will
yeah, I got funded. Yes, when it's built, yeah, what that road might look like. So yeah, thank you to the faculty that have helped this semester. And with that, I will pass it over to Janelle.
Thanks, Janelle. I can figure out this clicker. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Vice Mayor and Council. My name is Janelle Seifert, and I am a master's student at ASU. I'm finishing up my last year in urban and environmental planning. So just to kind of preempt this, I did a presentation last semester that went through the methodology of the survey. This is really just looking at a broad sweep of the results. You will be getting a larger report with more of the details, but this will just give you kind of the larger patterns that we noticed. So a quick overview of today's agenda. First, we're going to discuss the goals of the survey as we originally designed it. Then we'll look at the citywide analysis. So we asked questions just about Clarkdale as a whole, and then we'll zoom in and look at specific Clarkdale neighborhoods and how people are feeling about amenities in those neighborhoods. Then we'll get on to recommendations, and then finally I'll open the floor to you guys to ask any questions and we can have a bit of a discussion. So the survey goals were threefold. The first was really to assess Clarkdale's satisfaction with services, events, and amenities. And then the second was to identify interests in the near and longer term. So we wanted to see how Clarkdale residents, how important some of these services and amenities and goals were for Clarkdale residents in the 2 to 5 year range. And then finally, we wanted to see how that compared to the to your guys' planning goals as outlined in your strategic plan. So a lot of the wording from the survey is lifted from that most recent strategic plan. So just a brief overview about the survey. We had 316 respondents. It was open for nearly a month, and the majority of the respondents were online. We only had 2 people actually fill out the survey in person, but it was an option for people in case they didn't have any internet access. Just to go over a brief demographics of the sample, we didn't really go into a huge amount of sociodemographics. We just looked at what we felt was necessary for the purposes of this survey. So first, most respondents were between their 40s and 70s. This survey was only open to people 18 plus. And it was pretty split between people who have lived in Clarkdale in the short term and people who have lived in Clarkdale for a very long time. So 0 to 5 years, there was 93 respondents, and then 11 plus years was 95 respondents, which I thought was really
very
interesting. Yeah. And then one of the things you mentioned is we wanted to see how respondents or how residents are currently getting information. So right now, Small Talk newsletter is running the game. There are a lot of people that responded that they are currently using Small Talk newsletter, and then the Facebook website and Clarkdale update were pretty much tied for second. Instagram and Twitter were lower, but especially with engaging with younger populations, it's still worth keeping them up. And then here's communication preferences. So before we were looking at what they were using, now we're looking at what they actually prefer. As you can see, most residents still prefer using emails, so that Small Talk update is going to be a really invaluable resource for you guys moving forward. Interestingly, in person was a very big option. So, you know, obviously there's options for people to go in person. Just continue doing that and maybe offer more opportunities in the future if possible. Yeah. Clarkdale overall. So this is the first question of the survey. It really opens it up and lets people really think about how they view Clarkdale overall, how they view their life in Clarkdale overall, their level of satisfaction. So it ranges from very satisfied to very dissatisfied. And as you can see, this paints a very rosy view of Clarkdale. The vast majority of people are some level of satisfied with their life in Clarkdale, with only a little bit over 5 expressing some level of dissatisfaction with life here. And we will get into specific reasons why that may be in the upcoming slides. So services and amenities, this is a broad screenshot. There were a lot of services and amenities that we looked at. This was again on the scale from 1 to 7, very dissatisfied to very satisfied. So the highest ranked service was police services, and people were on average satisfied with police services in Clarkdale. The lowest ranked service was tourism marketing. People were only slightly satisfied with tourism marketing. And that is mainly because it was a bit of a contentious issue. And it's a bit polarizing, and I'll talk about that a little bit further along in the presentation. The highest ranked amenity was the number of parks. People were satisfied with that. And the lowest was bike paths, so very pertinent to the conversation. I was like, oh, I can actually weave this in. And people were pretty neutral about that, so that may be due to some safety concerns that were brought up. Now, this question was just referencing services, and it asked residents to rank the top 3 services that they thought were most important. So it really kind of forced their hand to pick out of all of the services we mentioned, which ones were of the most vital importance for you guys to focus on in the upcoming 2 to 5 years. As you can see, police services ranked as the highest, which is interesting because people were also very satisfied with it. So it seems like it's important, but just keep doing what you're doing. Not really many complaints there. I also wanted to highlight streets and roadways. that was not the lowest ranked service, but it was on the lower end, and people find it very important. And I'll discuss it a bit further along in the survey, in the presentation. Now going on to events, people had pretty, static views of the events. There wasn't much variation in how much they liked or disliked and were satisfied with them. But something that I wanted to know was that when we gave them an option to actually write in their opinions or later on, some people did mention a couple of events, and they were Christmas in Clarkdale and Halloween in Clarkdale. They were mentioned for two very different reasons, actually, basically opposite reasons. The first reason was Christmas in Clarkdale. Residents wished that there was more going on. They wanted more events. They felt like it could be improved in that sense. And then the opposite was true for Halloween, with the word chaotic.
It's chaotic.
Yeah.
Did you come to home?
No, maybe I will. Maybe this year I'll go check it out, see firsthand. But overall, people were still overall satisfied with all of the events. It seemed like there was a pretty vocal number of people that had strong opinions about it, though.
Oh, yeah.
So here is similar to the services where we had respondents pick 3 goal areas that they wanted the town to focus on in the upcoming 2 to 5 years. And I've put a star on some of them that I think are important to talk about. So the first is conserving water. This got mentioned quite a lot throughout the written response section. People were very concerned about the water conservation plan for the town. Second was roads, which, as I noted earlier, was also ranked fairly highly in the services section. So it keeps coming up again and again as an important issue for people living in the town of Clarkdale. Now, affordable housing and tourism, they were both contentious issues. They were very polarizing. So there were some people that were really gung-ho about it and some people that really weren't. And so I will kind of go through a couple of excerpts from the written responses so I can give you a bit of an idea of why that might be the case. So for affordable housing, a lot of people were saying it is a top priority and they think that we should really focus on it. Interestingly enough, there were a lot of people that had very strong opinions against affordable housing, but something that I noticed was that a lot of people cited water conservation as a reason why they didn't want affordable housing, because they were concerned about the growth of the town. Now for tourism, again, a lot of people felt that it was very necessary for the growth of the town. But other people said that we needed to focus on business first, and only once we gained more business in the downtown core, then could we expand the tourism marketing. Now here's a neighborhood analysis across the 6 neighborhoods that we analyzed. And as you can see, Lower Clarkdale and Crossroads area were the lowest rated, although it's not quite as cut and dry because we looked across amenities, and so there are a few other neighborhoods that I'd like to note that I think would be important to focus on in the future. Foothills and Upper Clarkdale, people were the most satisfied with those in this question. So these are the 2 lowest neighborhoods in the overall question, asking whether people were satisfied in their neighborhood. So Lower Clarkdale had the lowest mean in the quality of parks and recreational programming, and was also in the lower half of neighborhoods for a few other categories like bike paths. I'm looking at you guys. And then Crossroads, interestingly enough, it wasn't the lowest in any category, and it was only in the lower half for a couple categories, local businesses and number of youth activities. So I think a little bit of further investigation is needed to see why, when broken down further, people were satisfied, but in aggregate, they were less satisfied in Crossroads. Now, I also think it's important to look at Mountain Gate and Foothills area based on the breakdown across amenities. So Mountain Gate had the lowest mean in a lot of different categories: youth activities, public art, trails, bike paths. And then the Foothills area is another neighborhood that it's not as in dire need as Mountain Gate, but it was in the lower half for another host of issues, or amenities, recreational programming, public art, quality of parks, number of parks, and bike paths. And it was also the lowest mean in historic preservation. And I think some of you have the exact graph, so if you want to look through them specifically, feel free to, and I can answer any questions about those as well. So recommendations, let's start at the neighborhood level because we just went over that. So trails and bike paths, I think, are a really important place to start because they would take a bit less funding. They're a little easier to get going on, and there's a lot of energy behind them. And so I think that you should focus your attention on trails and bike paths in Mountain Gate, Foothills, and Lower Clarkdale. Then I think it would be interesting to talk to the Foothills community about historic preservation and why exactly they're not very satisfied with it. Are there any particular buildings that they are particularly concerned about being destroyed? That may be important information to know going forward. Finally, I think park programming overall for all of the neighborhoods of focus would be important. There were a few neighborhoods or a couple neighborhoods that mentioned, quality of parks and number of parks. But I think even just adding park programming may help people utilize the existing parks more so than, having to spend as much money up front. So you can try first to get people engaged in the existing infrastructure. Townwide, I think that there should be a master plan, especially for water conservation and security, that is very well discussed in public, because people are not really aware about it. It's really a pinch point for people to feel comfortable with the town growing. And so until people feel comfortable with that, there may still be opposition to growth projects. There was also especially in the qualitative section in the written response, a lot of people brought up that they wish that there was more businesses in the downtown core and that they would be, willing to use tax incentive structures in order to make that happen. A lot of people specifically mentioned grocery stores. Sprouts was mentioned a lot. And then finally, road repair and maintenance, that was widely mentioned in really many parts of the survey. People wanted it to be maintained more and certain areas to be redone. And then participation. I mean, I'm a little biased, but I think that you guys should continue to put out this survey on a frequent basis. Depending on what your availability is, it could be really useful to see how opinions are changing over time. So you can really track whether your changes are making a difference in how people are feeling about the town and the amenities and services. And then also another point is that we wanted to go into this and gain participation by the Yavapai Apache Nation, but unfortunately we didn't receive any responses from people that lived on tribal land. This is going to be a bit of a difficult process because it may take some trust building over time in order to have them involved in the process. I go into that more into detail in the report, but I think it's really important to note that working with an organization like Arizona State University, you're going to be subject to more rules and regulations regarding interacting with the Native communities, that if you're not working with ASU, you may be able to just open up a dialogue with them without all the red tape. And questions and discussion.
Lisa.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. Could you tell me whether the completed report will have all the comments that people wrote in it?
Yeah, so as of now, I have an appendix that has all of the information, and we can discuss exactly how to get that information to you, but it'll either be linked or set in a separate document. I have them all set up in Excel spreadsheets for you guys to look at, but then just looking through it, I've summarized the patterns that I found.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I noticed that not every neighborhood was represented that we had listed on the survey. So does that mean people in those neighborhoods did not complete the survey?
No, so what happened was that there were some neighborhoods that were smaller and then they got congregated into a nearby or adjacent neighborhood. And so in the report, it will be detailed that what neighborhoods were combined to make that larger area. Because in statistics, you usually want to have about 30 respondents before you can really say anything meaningful about the averages and
Thank
other
you.
statistics.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know how our respondents, the number of respondents compared to like when you do this in other communities, on average, how many people or what percentage of people participate?
It's interesting because some surveys, you can actually, send out a specific, you'll send the survey out to a specific list of people and then you can actually get a response rate percentage. But this one was more, it was more loose because it was on the social media, there was signs, it was sent out in the small talk update. And so this one, I can't say exactly what the response rate was, but I will say that we were aiming for 200 to 300 respondents, and we ended up a little bit above that. So I was very pleasantly surprised to see that, and that bodes well for the amount of participation in the community.
Yeah, I think it's about 7%, close to 7% return sort of our populations. That's not bad.
Yeah, that's also like
That's what
18 plus,
yeah,
so then,
yeah.
it's a little
That's-
complicated to get the exact, but.
Julia, come up to the mic if you could, please.
Thank you, Julia Colbert. Whenever we do communities like similar, not quite to the community satisfaction level, we'll do surveys like this and maybe the City of Peoria, which is one of our partners for a while. We'll send it out to mailers across the city and we'll get the same number of responses. So I was really pleased and excited that we had around the 300 level mark for a smaller community like Clarkdale, since I think proportionally, I don't know, sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe like 50 people are answer. So I think it really goes to show how engaged the community is in the town, and that it was only open for about a month and we opted to not do any. This was in the previous semester's presentation, but we decided not to do survey incentives. So a lot of the times you'll include like a raffle for something, but we didn't seem like we needed to do that for this type of process. So I'm very pleased with the response rate for this. I think overall it was very well received.
And I'm used to like 3 to 5%. We're thrilled.
Yeah.
On community surveys, so and
Mhm.
we were very happy with
Yeah,
those.
7, about 7%. So
Yeah, and she could do the appropriate statistics, which is always good. That's
Thank you.
Just one quick question. You mentioned the preferred method for communication, and it was email. Is that in direct relationship to the town manager's report that goes out in email every week and reached in other channels as well? Or are they looking for a specific targeted email?
Yeah, so there was 2 questions. One was just kind of asking broadly across different platforms, so email, Instagram, Facebook, cell phone. And then the second one asked specifically how people were currently getting getting their information from Clarkdale, and then that one specified, or small talk update and the Clarkdale update. And yeah, so both, but the email, the small talk would be.
The small talk's typically mailed out,
Oh,
not.
wait, sorry, I'm mixing it
Yeah.
up. Okay,
Yeah.
inverting them. The Clarkdale update is the
Yeah.
email, yes. So then.
Yeah,
they
because
were-
small talk goes to every household.
That has.
that's on the water system.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But the
I don't,
Clarkdale update is just
But-
whoever's registered or whose email, ever
Correct.
emails with me gets put on the list. So
Right.
Fair warning.
Well, and small talk's also posted on our website as well, so people can go retrieve it. It's just not
Right.
the same.
And it has been
Right.
posted on Facebook as well lately.
Okay, all
yeah,
right, good.
so it gets out in a number of different ways. even
We
if
do that
don't get
for
it.
all the Clarkdale update and the small talk. We put them, I sound like I have a mouse in my pocket. Shell puts them on the website, and then we put both on the social
Social
media
media.
sites as well. So they're kind of same distribution methods, but small talk gets much more direct contact.
Quite
Okay.
direct.
I just want to say this has been a great piece of work. I think it's really going to help us to deep dive and figure out really our way forward. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and you can look forward to the larger report. I'm just editing it up now, but pretty hefty document. Light reading.
Boiled it down.
No,
Great to work with you.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
So much.
yeah,
Thank you so
Good
much.
job.
this has been fabulous. Water we knew, water security we knew we felt was important as we've talked about it. And it's really great to see it come to the top with those who participated in the survey. So I think we have some plans to do it, some of what you've talked about, go very public and talk about our water resources here. So that was really nice to see. I think things we knew and were reiterated were roads and road maintenance. That's been with the town for an awful long time. I like that the responses seem to be very well across the community, which was really nice. So it wasn't just representative of what like the older part of town, but all of the communities. And that was, I thought that split was pretty consistent across the board. So that was really nice. So that gives us some really good base information. So I think those are the things I took away from your brief presentation, and I have very much appreciated you taking on this project for us. This has
Thank you
been
so
terrific.
much.
And I think we'll get a lot of good comments from it. Yes.
You know, I was gonna reflect on what you were saying. I feel like it really is reflective of the conversations we've been having
Yeah.
for a while. And so I think that makes me feel like, okay, we are actually paying attention to what folks are saying and we're hearing what people are saying, and then to see it come down and be able to say to people, we're hearing it from everything from the sprouts to the roads. And I think that addresses where, you know,
Yeah.
on that side of town where there aren't really any, you know, supermarkets or services, and I think people, I live here in Upper Clarkdale. I'm used to going to Cottonwood. If I moved into a new neighborhood, I might be like, wait, where's the amenities that are supposed to be near me? So I think this is really just very good.
So
Yeah.
thank you so much.